Our team's excited to be here, compete in March Madness. Came a long way to Ohio from Southern California, but the weather's been pretty nice, so we're looking forward to playing Friday, tomorrow, early game. And Michigan State's a great team, a great program, and we're excited to play against them.
If you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand. We'll get a mic to you.
Shotgun Spratling, USCFootball.com. Andy, you guys have played a ton of late games on the West Coast. How do you prepare your team to play an earlier game? Is that something that you're concerned about going into this one?
Our television schedule this year put a lot of tip times, 8 o'clock or later on the West Coast. So that was 11 p.m., so a lot of family and friends. I'm from Pennsylvania, so a lot of people that try to watch your games from the East Coast have a little trouble at 1 in the morning when they end. But this is an early game. I told our players there are no excuses. It might feel like 9 a.m. in the morning, but we're in March Madness. You have to get ready to play mentally and go compete at the highest level.
Adam Jardy with the Columbus Dispatch. You mentioned obviously a bit of a flight from there to here. In 2 years, that's going to be the norm for you guys. And I know you're focused on the here and the now, but have you thought about that at all, that this is going to be what's going to be the future once you join the Big Ten?
Actually, someone reminded us when we landed the Tuesday night when we landed in Columbus that, hey, this is going to be the normal trip. It's a longer flight, colder weather, but we really haven't thought about that yet. We have one more year in the Pac-12. We were so focused on competing for a Pac-12 championship this season. Ironically, we do play a Big Ten team here in the first round, but we'll get to that a year and a half from now. But two good conferences, one just a little further away.
Kyle Austin, MLive.com. Obviously, there's a lot of style differences between Pac-12 basketball and Big Ten basketball. But wondering what you kind of see those differences are and how you prepare your team.
I don't know what style the Big Ten plays. I think it's just a basketball game. You get on the court. Michigan State's a lot like us. We have 4 guards. We start 4 guards. We've started 2 bigs the last 3 or 4 years. We've had Onyeka Okongwu and 6th pick in the draft, Evan Mobley, the 3rd pick in the draft, Isaiah Mobley, who drafted last year. We had Nick Rakocevic. Before that, Chimezie Metu plays for the Sacramento Kings. We have a lot of good big men. This year's team is different for us, so we're really not concerned about what other perceived styles are in other conferences. We're really just concerned about USC and what we have to do to win games. I think players change every year, so your style of play, at least we try to adjust to our strengths. So this year our style of play is different than it was last year, the previous years with some really good big men. Our big men are capable this year. They're better defensively right now, as Josh Morgan was first-team all-defense in the league, leading shot blocker. Vince Iwuchukwu, our 7'1", 5-star freshman, had some issues this summer and hasn't played a lot, and then he had a back injury. So we are a different team than we were last year, which was different than the previous 2 years, but still very successful.
Hey, Coach, Tom Withers, Associated Press. I cover the Mobley brothers, and they send their best. Hey, I read that you said this is your most improved team at USC. Where have you guys made your strides this year?
As I just mentioned, we had an issue this summer with Vince, so we had some plans to play 2 true big men together like we have the last few years, but then we realized that our best offensive players were guards, including Drew Peterson and Boogie Ellis, who are returning guys that had a big game experience. We anticipated them being our leading scorers, which they ended up being. But we were not very good in the beginning of the season. We had a lot of new faces, a lot of 5 freshmen, 4 sophomores, and even our younger sophomores had not been relied upon to do what they're doing now. So we thought it would take some time for this team to develop and improve and get some experience, and they did. Give this team a ton of credit because you say, well, who's your most improved player? We have a lot of most improved players, including Boogie Ellis, who's a senior. And if you would have seen Boogie last year compared to what he did this year, especially the second half of this season, it's a really dramatic improvement. And he spent so much time focusing on how to lead a team, how to make plays for his teammates. His assist-to-turnover ratio went way up. His scoring went up. His shot selection became more efficient. So we have a lot of improved players, but he's a key part because even though he's a senior, he improved as much as anybody else.
Andy, will Vincent be able to play tomorrow?
Vince is day-to-day. I think he had that back issue. We're hopeful. He may or may not play. We'll probably know tomorrow morning when he wakes up.
Chris Solari, Detroit Free Press. Andy, Michigan State over the years has been a team that pushes the pace and runs on the break. This year, not as much. Do things change? Can teams make a change between conference play and the NCAA with the refereeing? Is that something that you kind of look at, the historical aspect of how they play in the tournament versus what they do during the conference season?
Well, I think it's very difficult to just change your strengths or how you play when you go into the NCAA tournament. So I assume Michigan State will push the ball. They'll try to shoot threes early in transition because they have great shooters. And they'll play their style like we will. We have strengths, and we'll try to play to our strengths like Michigan State. So I find it very hard it's very difficult as a coach to say, hey, we've been doing something for 31, 32 games, and now we're going to do something different because of who we play, or now we're in the postseason. So I assume most teams in March Madness will play their strengths.
Coach Bill Bender, Sporting News. I don't know if you had a chance to watch a little bit of Arizona State last night. They had a pretty impressive win. I mean, what can you say about the overall strength of the Pac-12 teams in the tournament? Aside from them, I mean, are you anticipating a strong weekend?
Well, I think one of their players or coaches, I'm not sure who it was, made a comment after the game, said their last 5 games were against Arizona twice, USC twice, and UCLA. And now they get to play Nevada, who's also a good team, but just a different league. But they just played the five games against the toughest teams in the Pac-12, and so they were mentally and physically ready to go play this game, and they played great. I said after we beat them the last regular season game that they deserved to be in the tournament, which I really believe I thought they did, because they had 20-some wins and were a very good basketball team, and so I was happy to see them do well last night. They played excellent offensive basketball, scored 98 points, and I think our league over the years has been, I just mentioned in my first comment, when you tip at 8 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night, the East Coast really doesn't get to see Arizona State too often, and so I'm happy for them. They played a great game last night. It was good to see for our league.
Michael Cohen from Fox Sports. Andy, this is a time of year where, in addition to these postseason tournaments, now there are also players entering the transfer portal whose seasons are already over. How do you and your staff kind of balance trying to stay as focused as you can on the task at hand, but also knowing that roster building is basically a 365-day-a-year effort now?
Well, that's why you hire good assistant coaches, because it's their job to get up at 5 in the morning and start looking at the transfer portal. I get to sleep in.
Andy, Shotgun Spratling, 24/7 Sports. With the starts that you guys have had, it's been inconsistent, even dating back to the tournament last year. You guys got off to a slow start. How do you make sure that you come out with the intensity necessary to play March Madness basketball?
Well, I think our players, that's on them. They have to be ready to go. We've had a lot of fast starts this year, and we've had some slow starts this year, so you just never know. As a coach, you can't go out and watch warm-ups and say, I've already tried that many times over my coaching career. You have no idea how your team, they may make every shot in warm-up and miss your first 8. Or they may look lethargic in warm-ups and come out and go on a 15-2 run. You just never know. So I think, as I told our players, this is what you play for. This is what you dream about as a young player growing up. You're on the biggest stage and competing for a national championship. So they better be ready. I'm sure they will.
Andy, right over here. Graham Couch, Lansing State Journal. Forgive me if you were asked this at the beginning. I missed the first couple minutes. But the playing at 12:15 in Columbus is something you're going to have to do in 18 months regularly. And I'm wondering just what you think of, everything you've got to do this morning this early for your guys and everything, and just sort of the fairness of having to come this far east and play at this time and how that affects things.
Well, we're on spring break this week, so I guess the first part of that question, our players have nothing to worry about except basketball. 18 months from now, when you have class 5 days a week and you're playing a midweek game, it will be a little challenging for the academic side, but that's why we have great learning specialists, tutors, and we have academic advisors. So that's the biggest concern I think we have looking 18 months from now when we join the Big Ten about traveling. It's the academic side of it. The basketball side, your body needs to get adjusted to the time difference and go compete. So we have no idea what the scheduling will be like, the scheduling models for the Big Ten, but I have not spent more than 2 minutes thinking about that in the last year, or last 9 months since this was announced. Our job is to run a basketball program in the present, and that present was play in the Pac-12, and now we're in March Madness. So I'm sure with 2 days here on the East Coast, our players will be energetic and ready to go tomorrow. And we'll get them up early and go from there.
Chris Solari, Detroit Free Press. Andy, when you look at Michigan State's guards, now that you've had a chance to kind of break down tape, what do you see from them, particularly with Tyson Walker and the amount of guys that they have that can handle the ball? How does that affect who they are?
Tyson Walker is an elite scorer. He can shoot it with range, very quick, and just a really good player. He's all-conference player in the Big Ten. He's one of their leaders, but they have a lot of other good players, too, that complement what he does. And so Tyson Walker will certainly be a big focus of any team that plays Michigan State, and we were very impressed watching video on him. He's a terrific player.
Down here in front.
Adam Jardy with the Columbus Dispatch. When you coach for a significant period of time, you're going to have ups and you're going to have downs. And I wonder what it takes as a coach when things are not going well, when you go through a rough season or 2 rough seasons. Like, what does it take to continue to kind of coach to what your convictions are and your strengths are, and also trying to recognize that, like, maybe that's not working at the moment? What is that balance like when you're going through a rough time?
Well, I think our first 2 years at USC, 10 years ago, we took over a program. And our first year, we went 2-16 in the Pac-12. We were dead last. And then we really improved our second year to 3-15. So we were a much improved team that second year, but still last place in the conference. And I think when you're building a program, or trying to anyway, you have to believe in what you're doing, believe in the future, and you have to convey that to recruits as well as your current players and your staff. I had a terrific staff then and as well as now. And Chris Kapko was on my initial staff 10 years ago, and he's now my associate head coach. But when you go through that, I can remember one of my assistant coaches saying in that second year, hey, we've done this before at Florida Gulf Coast. You've been around this game a long time. You know what you're doing as a head coach. Just keep doing it because we'll get there. And that was great advice from one of my assistant coaches, Kevin Norris, because he realized that, hey, it's tough losing. It's tough when you go out there and your talent level is not good enough to compete at the highest level. And then we had to start recruiting players and then bring some in and develop them and put them in position to succeed, hopefully. In that third year, then we turned the program, won 20-some games, went to the tournament. On a yearly basis, like this year, you have highs and lows every year. I think a lot of coaches, they appreciate the wins a lot less than they take the losses a lot harder than they appreciate the wins, if that makes sense. So when you lose a game, the world's coming down. You lose 2 in a row. Oh, wow, we may not win a game the rest of the season. So I think what I've learned as a head coach, and my first job was in 1994 with the Milwaukee Bucks. That's a long time ago, almost 20-some years ago. So I think what I've learned is just try to have more of an even demeanor with our players, whether we win or lose, because you can't get too excited when you win, and certainly you have a lot to play for even when you lose a couple games. So for the most part, our team has bounced back when we lose and has done a really good job of refocusing, and that comes from the commitment to our players as well as a great coaching staff.
We have time for one more for Coach, if anyone has a question.
Tom Withers, AP, just since you brought it up, Andy, it's been 10 years since the Dunk City run. How often do you reflect on that, and do you share some of those memories with the guys you have now?
Yeah, it is special. It's amazing. It's been 10 years. Dunk City team was a group of young men that came together, had no clue what they were getting in for. We were a young staff and a brand new school. So I'm still every day, or every time I think about that team, which since it's a 10-year anniversary, I've been emailed and texted a lot of the highlights, and we actually showed our team some of the highlights 2 days ago before we left. What March Madness is like. We showed some highlights of our USC teams from the last year, the Elite 8 year 2 years ago, some of the Dunk City, just to get them pumped up to play in this tournament. And the Dunk City players have gone on and have great careers. A couple of them are in coaching, like Brett Comer. The point guard from that, Bernard Thompson, Chase Fielder are still playing overseas. I think Sherwood Brown is still playing overseas or off and on. And other guys have gone on into the business world and have done well. So it's really great to keep in touch with players that have meant so much personally to me. First of all, because We recruited them and loved them all as individuals, but then what they did on the basketball court was special, and to do that in March Madness was incredible. So Dunk City will always be remembered. I usually think about it this time more so than in June and July when I'm on a golf course. But they, what a just a special group of young men, and it's really nice that my family still has a relationship with a lot of those guys.
Thank you, Coach. Appreciate your time, and good luck.